is that wealth building is just for high income earners.
If you continue to do what everyone else does, you'll end up in the same space as them. And that same space might be average, and that's not what I wish on anybody. But a lot of people are genuinely feeling pain out there. It's $400 to $500 a week in rent. That's starting to get tricky. I've been in this situation and I know how uncomfortable it can be when you run out of money before you run out of week. These days, go to the food court, it's $20-$30 for your lunch. Which, it could be $4 or $5 if you made something leftovers from the night before. If your goal is to be able to get ahead financially, these are some of the short-term sacrifices that will help you be on that trajectory.
You can't save your way to wealth, you've got to invest it. Number one is the emergency fund, and number two is
been an exceptionally good way of seeing your cash grow.
About 5 years ago, she said to me, Mitch, I've saved up $5,000. Today it would probably be worth $15,000. So that's the cost of indecision.
The habits that we create that establish where we end up being. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show. Quick announcement before we start. A staggering 71% of our regular listeners aren't subscribers to this podcast. I'd ask a favor, if you've ever listened to any episode of this, enjoyed the content, taken something from it, please take a moment to subscribe to the show. You've no idea how it'll help our business and, more importantly, get this message out to more and more people that are there. So to this week's episode, if you're someone that earns between $60,000 to $80,000 a year and you're looking to start building wealth, the cost of living crisis made it very hard. There are plenty of tips, tricks, and strategies that we're going to share in here to help you improve your financial circumstances. We'll see you in the show. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show with me, your host, Andrew Baxter, and as always, my offsider and co-host, Mitchell Olarenshaw.
Thanks, Mr. B, for having me on the show. Now, today's topic of conversation, we're going to jump straight into this, and this is going to be a very practical session for our listeners out there. For anyone earning roughly the average Australian income per annum, we're talking $60,000 to $80,000 salary per annum. This episode is for you because we're going to teach you how to manage your money.
Look, it's a crucially important topic to cover, particularly given the cost of living crisis that's gripping our country. A lot of people are genuinely feeling pain out there. So hopefully there's some pearls of wisdom in that which we share today that can help people maybe, get on track, keep on track, or get themselves ahead a little bit and come up for air, because getting by on the average these days is getting very, very difficult.
Yeah, and I guess up front, I think the thing we want to debunk at the beginning of this episode is that wealth building is not just for high income earners. Okay, you can get started wealth building on any wage if you are strict enough on yourself.
I think that's so true. And to preface what we're going to talk about today, it doesn't matter where you are right now. It's about the trajectory that you, and I use this word carefully, the trajectory that you choose to set yourself up on going forward. And that's the most important thing, because if you're in a situation right now that you want to improve, well, you can choose to do that. It's going to require the sleeves being rolled up, a little bit of work, and some smart tactics, and that strong desire to improve where you're at. And if you're in that position, then you're going to take a lot out of all that which we share today.
Yeah, that's the thing. Money's easy to spend, but it's not so easy to save and invest. And I think that's where most people get caught up. So let's get started. Let's work with a real example here. So you've got somewhere in the average income, let's call it an $80,000 a year salary plus your super. Obviously, you can't access that for now. So you've got your 80 grand coming in. You're going to be taxed. Probably 15,000 out of that. So your net take home is going to be about 65 grand.
So $1,200 a week or thereabouts.
Yeah, 1,300 a week. Yeah, roughly.
So that's what you're working with. And, I guess the three big rocks to put in the bucket before anything else is: where do you live? How do you get around? And what do you eat?
I like that.
Three sort of chunky areas where you sort of can zone in and see where the biggest amount of expenditure is. And let's start with the obvious one, given the housing crisis we're in, and that's where you live.
Yeah.
So, rent or mortgage, most likely rent if you're in that situation. But if you've got a mortgage, first up, if that's you, firstly, massive congratulations on getting into the property market. I just love it when people get started. And if you've been able to get yourself into that situation where you are a mortgage holder, where you own a property, that's just absolutely fantastic.
Totally.
So if you're renting, where are you renting? What type of place are you in? Is there anything that you can do to, I guess, cut that cost down a little bit if you're renting, because anything you're not paying out in rent gives you something to put in the investing column. You might be in a house share, or maybe you're living solo. Bit of a stretch to live solo on that kind of income, but you might be living solo. Something to consider: get a flatmate. House share will be the two big things, or rent somewhere that's as cheap as your ego will allow.
That's it. I think, personally speaking, when you look at your net take home, try and keep that rent or that mortgage, but let's assume rent, less than 30% of your net take home.
Yep. Again, that's starting to get tricky. If you think about it, you're taking home $1,200-1,300 a week,
$400-500 a week,
$400 to $500 a week in rent, which is now a big challenge.
But with two people, let's say you had a housemate, that's $1,000 a week. That's not a bad place to live. $1,000 a week, assuming you went to Harvard.
Yep.
$400 to $500 each. Then that's a little bit more palatable, right?
It is if you have a flatmate. I mean, you could argue also if you're in a relationship with somebody as well. Wouldn't be an advocate for getting into a relationship with someone purely for economic reasons, but nonetheless, it can soften the blow, because the fixed costs are effectively halved if you're not on an equal weighting, I suppose.
Okay, so my question to you then, AB, you've got to rent somewhere and you've got to pony up $400 to $500 a week just in rent. Your net take home's around $1,200 or $1,300. Is there any possible way to reduce that cost? Because likely that's going to be the biggest single expense that you have, and you've got to live somewhere. Unfortunately, I mean, living at home is another idea. A huge share house, but those situations aren't really necessarily ideal, right?
No, they're not ideal. I guess, again, it comes back to what are your goals, where you're trying to get yourself, and a house share. And look, I haven't lived with people other than family for a very long time. I have done a house share, actually. And
what was it like?
I was still best friends with one of the lads that I live with. I was talking to him yesterday. Yeah.
Is this when you moved to London and started your career?
This was when I was at university.
Okay.
And I'm still good friends with two of the guys and best mates with one of them for sure.
Interesting. And there's a silver lining.
Yeah, look, it was, we had some great times. But that was also a chapter in your life where that was the expected way to live, as opposed to as you get a little bit older, sometimes you value your space a little bit more. I think house share can work, or flatmate if you're able to just have one person. There's a lot less personalities to have to manage. I've got friends who've done that, and one of them's got someone that works on nights. They're a nurse, and so it works perfectly. They barely see each other, so to all intents and purposes, you've got the benefit of having a whole place. The other person's on a different shift. You don't see them. It just helps with it until you come down in the morning and the sink's full of washing up, and the dirty washing is on the floor, or the wet washing is.
That would kill me.
They're some of the idiosyncrasies, I suppose, of living with someone. But again, if that gives you the ability, by taking a flatmate in, to take a chunk out of your rent, for argument's sake, and that lets you save a couple $100 a week, maybe $200-300 a week, that's a really material saving, which can start to propel you in the ability to be saving for a deposit, ultimately to get into the property market or to start investing, which is the goal of what it needs to be if you want to get ahead financially, which is an insurmountable mountain to look at when you're on an average income and you see, a third of your net income going out of the door in rent.
Yep. And that's it. Budgeting, saving, investing is the pathway we want all of our listeners on this to get to.
100%.
So we've covered the rent. So where you live being number one. So let's say it's $400 a week in rent, out of your $1,200 or $1,300. The next biggest one is where you drive. And I've heard this comment a few times: is drive the car, the best car that your ego can allow you to.
Yeah, that's definitely. Take a walk in the car park downstairs at this office. We don't always follow.
We don't follow our rules.
I think it's such like a car is. Depending on where you live. So, for example, I was living in London for about a year before I realised I didn't need my car. I kept it for 2 years, but I realised I didn't need it for that period of time, because it's one of those cities which, number one, it has, and I'm sure someone will have a comment on this, but I believe it has the best public transport in the world.
Yep.
You can get from anywhere to anywhere very, very easily. And some of the cities in Australia are comparable in terms of
Melbourne's
the ability.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty solid. Bring your own machete just to make sure you're safe. So you've got the ability to get around using public transport. Although public transport can be expensive, in London it is exceptionally good value. The Oyster system is really good. That's one thing. Secondly is congestion. And thirdly is having to pay to park everywhere. So there's a compelling reason to not necessarily have a car. And if you've got you don't have off-street parking, it's going to get vandalized. You've still got to insure it. Your insurance premiums are going to be higher if you're in a city, all those different things. So if you can, try and opt out of that, because it's a big saving. Secondly, a lot of people use a car loan to purchase a car, which is a strange phenomenon. If you're in a position where you own a company or you're self-employed and you've got the ability to have tax benefits from the transport you have, that's a very, very different conversation. But if we're talking to someone right now that's salaried, owning a car, and if you've got a car loan, you're effectively paying finance, which is probably going to cost you, I don't know what the current rate would be on that, probably 6 or 7%, I would say right now, to buy a depreciating piece of metal.
Yep.
So effectively, you're paying more than what the car is worth now for something that's going to be worth a third of that by the time you finish paying for it.
For the privilege of losing money.
Yeah, effectively. And when you look at it through those lenses, cynical as they may sound, it's not a great investment decision, and can be a big consumer of. You need to be able to get around. So maybe there are other ways you can get around. If you might be able to cycle, you might be able to get an e-scooter these days, or if you've got public transport, you've got that. So really seriously look at whether or not you need a car, because that can be a big commercial saving for you if you don't. If you do need a car, well, that's a different conversation. It's what you need to be able to do what you have to do. But it's an expensive asset to hold if you can avoid it.
I've always worked on the philosophy, or always been told rather, that you only spend on a car up to 3 months of your gross income, up to, ideally less. So if you make $5,000 a month, which is roughly what the average income earner would make, you're going to spend about $15,000 on a car. You can get a pretty decent car for $15,000. There's no problems with that, and that'll get you from A to B whilst you start your journey.
There you go. So there's a formula that you can now use to drop that in, and anything above and beyond that is possibly ego. That said, you get an older car, maybe there are some maintenance issues with it too. So there's more to explore in there, but I think it's a big pain source for a lot of people. And if you need a car for something, that one weekend a month that you're going somewhere, go and rent one.
So here's a question for you. If we talk about the car for a little bit longer, because this you can flesh out even more so. 15,000, let's say, spending on a car as an example. Do you buy a second-hand Mercedes for 15 grand, or do you buy a brand new Kia? Because I would argue that the cost to have a second-hand Mercedes, insurance, maintenance, tires, even though the car's worth 15 grand, the ongoing cost is probably going to be a lot more. Really, the smarter decision is the newer car that's maybe not as a recognizable brand.
That's right. And you might get I think some of these cars now have 5 or 7 year warranties with them as well, which sort of gives you a safety net that sits behind it. So that's also a consideration. I think I saw the other day, Gillian organised some travel, and I had an MG. And for those of you who haven't met in the flesh, I'm 6'4", so I'm a reasonable size in that car. My head was touching the roof. I had to zip the car around me. It was pretty small. But apparently 7-year warranty and a 22 grand new or something like that. So I mean, there are ways of doing that. I would avoid the debt, but then the flip side of that is if you've saved 22 grand up to be able to buy a car, that's probably something you want to be investing with, not using it to buy a car. I mean, I think the key thing is avoid it if you can.
What about like a novated lease or something? If you're in a position like a nurse, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there's salary sacrifice. There's lots of different ways that you can work through that if you have to do that. But that's certainly a big one. If you're in a city, you quite possibly don't need it. It might not be as convenient. But if it's got the ability to help you get yourself ahead financially, that sacrifice of inconvenience will come out in spades. Plus, you can have a couple of drinks after work if you want to do that and not have to worry about driving home.
That's right. It's funny, we're having this conversation. I was having this exact conversation with my sister recently. So for perspective, she's just got her first job as a lawyer in LA. She lives in the US. She's only 23. And she's going through all of this right now because she's only just gone on to the average income over there, buying a car. Where does she rent? So I literally had this exact conversation with her. It's quite
we should get Stevie on. That'd be a good guest appearance. We should do that.
She looks exactly the same as me. She's just a female version. So
she definitely doesn't look the same as you.
Okay, number 3, what you eat.
Yep.
Grocery shopping. I mean, because I actually also had this conversation with someone else. If you, for example, shop at Aldi, Coles, Woolworths, Harris Farm Markets, or the farmers markets, your experience in cost is going to be very, very different.
Yep. Look, there's degrees of everything in terms of how and where you can spend your money, and choosing a supermarket that's going to give you the ability to get the same or almost the same marginal benefit for a significantly smaller amount of dollars is something that makes a lot of sense. And again, you might need to go to 2 shops. You might do one, which is, let's see what I can get here at the cheaper place, if that's Aldi, and then you top it off with what you can get from Coles or Woolies or Harris Farm or wherever it may be on the way there. Key thing, shop weekly. And have a list and don't buy impulse stuff versus the convenience of shopping daily, which some people fall in the habit of. And I mean, the supermarkets have wised up to that, hence why you see the various Metro brands on the way home, because they know when you walk in the door, oh, I'll get that, and I'll get that, and I'll get that, and all of a sudden the cash yield on you as a customer is significantly higher.
I had an interesting experience at Harris Farm Markets the other day. I walked in, and blueberries at the moment are quite expensive. So the deal was, in plain bold writing, 2 for $8, and then in the fine print, all $4 each. So that's a really not a good deal at all.
You wonder what the
2 for $8 or
ACCC
or 4 each.
Yeah, nothing wrong with your maths. So it's
I thought that's interesting. Yeah.
3 for 12.
How many people would fall for that? Just an interesting tactic.
Well, I mean, there's been plenty of sort of publicity as to how our supermarkets have conducted themselves from a competition perspective in the past. But, you know, that notion of have a list, get what you need, plan your week out, again, doesn't sound like a heap of fun, but the long-term benefits of having your budget under control are crucial. You know, I've talked previously on this podcast, like when I first bought my first house in London and I was all in, I'd go to the gym, shower at the gym, save a bit of electricity at home, and a great hot shower, 20 minutes at the gym versus 2 minutes at home. And it's worked for me. I mean, financially, it certainly has, hasn't it?
Rookie numbers, right?
And but I used to go home via, either the Sainsbury's or Tesco Metro on the way home and buy whatever was reduced. It wasn't out of date. It's going to go out of date tomorrow, so they've got to clear it out. And again, that is a way where you can save yourself a few dollars in terms of those sorts of things. You think, well, what difference does that make? But it's not saving a few dollars or pounds here or there. It's I think the habit and mindset that you're actually wise to your bottom line of what you're doing. So, if you've got the ability to do that, supermarkets are well onto this, as I say. That's why they've got the various Metros, Woolies, Coles Metro, because they know if you go in there, you're going to drop a heap of money on other stuff you don't need. The other thing is I guess, eating out, and we were just talking previously about one of our former colleagues who's no longer with us. He's not dead, but he's not with us as an organisation. Who was it? How often a week?
5 nights a week, Uber Eats.
Right, 5 nights a week, Uber Eats. So if you just add that up, now I think I've used Uber Eats once to see what it was. So they charge delivery fee or not?
Yeah, so you're probably looking at 50 fees. It's $10 a pop, probably. So $50 a week in delivery fees, give or take.
So delivery fee, $10 each time.
Yep.
Plus whatever the food is, which is going to be at a premium because it's a takeaway of some sort for something that's going to be not primo quality because it's been delivered to you, so it's a chance to go cold.
Less healthy.
And probably a less healthy option because it's from wherever it might be. So the cost, the health benefits are not there. But also, if you look on the other side, if you're shopping and you've got leftovers, take your leftovers to work the next day for lunch. Make a sandwich, have something like that.
Meal prep.
Because if you don't, well, we'll know if you go out for lunch, these days, go to the food court in any city centre, it's $20-$30 for your lunch, which, it could be $4 or $5 if you made something at home, or even less, perhaps, if it's leftovers from the night before. And again, this all sounds, miserly, but if your purpose, and this is why it's so important to have very strong goals in life. If your goal is to be able to get ahead financially, these are some of the short-term sacrifices that will help you be on that trajectory to make that a reality.
Yep.
So, be minded of where you grocery shop, be minded of where you eat, avoid eating out, avoid Uber Eats, and take your lunch to work. There's some practical tips that sit in there to really assist you.
Can I make one more? Go and do a big Costco shop once a month and get everything in bulk, because that's where you can find some cracking deals.
So again, these are all ways of getting more for less. What's the marginal utility of a 3 kilo jar of peanut butter versus a $5 bagel one that you might get at Coles? It's the same. It's the same product. It's just bought in bulk.
Yep.
And it's
if you're going to use it anyway,
over a period of time. So again, that notion of not shopping on impulse is key. And don't go shopping when you're hungry after you've had your food. Otherwise, you're a bit peckish. I'll get that now, and then you get something else, and you end up buying a heap of stuff that you probably couldn't and shouldn't be having.
That's right. So let's look at the tally right now. So we've got this $1,300 a week income coming in, about the average net take home. We've got $400 on rent. We've got, say, $100 a week on a car lease. Let's just use that as an example. We've got a couple of $100 on groceries. So all up, we're in from about, say, $700.
Yep.
plus your utilities, you may be looking at $800 a week is what it's going to cost you to live.
Mobile phone, be the next one to add in there.
Yeah.
Any subscriptions of data, gym membership, and so on and so forth.
$850, $900. Yep.
And those things all add up really, really quickly.
They do.
And again, you know, you go, well, do I use it enough to justify it, or not? And I guess if you've got the time to indulge in Netflix and various other things in that sort of space, more strategic conversation, and we're talking about how to balance the books and get by on your income as it stands right now. But if you've a desire to improve your income and grow, one of the things that perhaps in that time that might be subscription time for Netflix, whatever, is maybe look at either some form of self-improvement, education, course, qualification, or something in that nature, or look at ideas for your side hustle type business or side income. So that's going to give you the ability over time to better grow something that then gives you the ability to supplement your income and get that side of the equation up. So you're taking a cost subscription out of the equation and replacing it with something hopefully over time that can help you build your wealth. And look, you know, a lot of people, you know, oh, this is all pie in the sky. You know, you don't know what it's like. I do know what it's like.
We've all been there.
I've been in this situation, and I know how uncomfortable it can be when you run out of money before you run out of week. And that's not a nice situation to be in. But it's something you can remedy. And some of these measures that we're talking about are practical tips for cutting the cash burn down. The other side of the equation is, and we're not at the investing stage here, obviously, because you've got to have surplus cash flow to be able to invest, but you can still be investing in yourself and growing your mindset as to where you want this to go. I remember years and years and years ago sitting around my dining table for the first time contemplating an investment education course. I remember turning the TV off, and I had this idea, and I sat down and started writing something out as a game plan. And it turned into, you know, a 9-figure business. So you can find ways of spending that time very, very wisely. And that was just something I looked up. Oh, that'd be interesting. I might have a bit of a look at. Maybe someone's interested in doing this, and formalize some of the training that I knew about.
And here we are today.
So, you know, you can put that time to good use in. And the other thing is, if you're busy doing something like that, you're not spending.
That's it.
You're not browsing, you're not scrolling, there's no online shopping. That's something else we might tag on, is just eliminate online shopping from your world if you're on a tight budget, because you'll end up spending, you know, way more than where it's at. So it's not doom and gloom. It can be very, very hard on that income level, but it's not the end of the world. It's where you are right now and where you choose to go, and choose wisely, and you can go to a lot of different places.
I'll offer a fairly blunt piece of advice, but very practical piece of advice. If you're on a $60,000 a year income and you have any sort of goal of getting ahead, don't smoke, don't drink, and don't gamble, because those things don't help you in the slightest, and they cost you a fortune. If you can give away those things, you're probably going to be ahead of most people.
Yeah. I think you could be applying for a job in the clergy soon, the clean living person that you are, Mitch.
I am, yeah. After post-ultra marathon.
It's, you know, it's eliminating the... it's really hard to sort of put a label to it, but there are softeners in life that you can eliminate that I think mentally you've got to be tough to. But if you're mentally hard enough to turn off those softeners and realize the cash burn that comes with them, as you say, you know, smoking, drinking, and gambling are three. Particularly smoking. I mean, I've no idea. I've never smoked, but I was at the petrol station the other day, and somebody bought a packet of cigarettes. I think it was like $50 or something.
Is that what they cost?
It's just like, you got to be kidding! $50 for a packet.
People
of
spend that sometime per day.
Yeah. You know, and then there's the health ramifications from that too.
Yeah.
So, you know, those are three things to limit. And like drinking, okay, you can go to Dan Murphy's or BWS and have some drinks at home, or you can go out. If you go out, you're going to shout around, which is, I've noticed, I saw there's a story the other day that the shout is ending. Apparently people don't shout rounds anymore.
Oh, I don't buy into that.
No,
I love a
into
good
it
round
either.
of shout.
Exactly right.
You have to.
But, you know, it's something that's phasing out, and you can understand that because you go and get a schooner of beer is probably $10 in most cities now.
It's $80 to $100 for a shout now, at least every time I go for a drink with the lads, for sure.
You know, so, you know, these are steps, and it's not the fun place. Just make a decision or a pledge to yourself. And look, if you're in a situation where you're on an average income and you're content, that's fine. You know, if you're content and you're happy with where you're at, stay on the trajectory you're at, and you can guarantee nothing will change, which is perfect. You'll still be content. If you're looking for a little bit more, and I appreciate that might sound a little bit harsh or out of touch. But if you're looking for a little bit more, you've got to do different things.
Yep.
If you continue to do what everyone else does, you'll end up in the same space as them. And that same space might be average, and that's not what I wish on anybody.
Yep.
If you want to step out of that crowd and set yourself for something more, work on how you can save a little bit of cash to be able to start that investing journey. Work on how you can grow as a human being, either through the self-discipline of self-sacrifice now for a bigger ability to do things in the future, or sacrifice a little bit of time into a side hustle of some description, or eliminate some of the really toxic habits like smoking, gambling, particularly as cash burns, then there's some tips that are going to set you there. Cars, well, we've talked about that within it. Having a flatmate to ease the cost of where you're at, put those things together, and you're in a position hopefully where even on that more modest income, you've got the ability to create some extra cash flow to do something good with.
Absolutely. Two more things on this list we need to get through. We've worked out, I guess this is probably the budgeting and the saving perspective of this conversation. The next is working out with that surplus cash, how you then build wealth. You can't save your way to wealth, you've got to invest it. And I would see two things. Number one is the emergency fund, as we talk about in the wealth playbook, number one. And number two is getting that money invested, whether it be shares or property. What would you say to someone on the average income who's maybe got, let's say, $200 to $300 a week in surplus cash to save, invest?
I think, again, this boils down to discipline and working consciously on that notion of having an emergency fund. So for the benefit of listeners, an emergency fund is your safety net of cash that you've got saved up just in case you lose your job or something calamitous happens and you need to be able to get hands-on cash quite quickly. And we typically work, as we do in the book, firstly to get a month's worth of your expenses covered. And then once you've been able to achieve a month's worth, work towards 3 months of having that I guess, peace of mind of knowing that if something terrible happens, you've got 3 months worth of expenses covered, which hopefully is long enough to help you get back on your feet and adjust to whatever the setback has been. That will be the first and foremost goal. And it's important to understand that that is an emergency fund. It's not for, oh, look, the guys are heading up to Bali for a bucks party. You're coming up and you go, okay, I'll tap into it. That is not the use of an emergency fund. It's not funding lifestyle. It's for just in case of an emergency, it's there for you. Once you've got that covered, well, to have gotten to that point of 3 months of emergency fund of bills covered, you've probably demonstrated a new habit of saving, which is a terrific breakthrough in the first instance. So the next goal is to start to build up some investment capital, and that's going to take a little bit of time to build up a meaningful amount. And if you're adding, let's just say for argument's sake, $250 a week to that pile, every month you've got $1,000. Your goal might be to get up to say $2,500 as your first milestone. So that's going to be 10 months of saving, which is hardcore. That's not going to buy you property, very obviously. But what you can do is then get that money working a little bit harder than the cash rate by putting it into, let's say, an exchange traded fund, which is an investment on the stock market, but instead of in an individual share, it's against the index of the stock market, for example. And if we look at the way markets have been performing over the last few years, that's been an exceptionally good way of seeing your cash grow, 17, 18% a year if you're trading the NASDAQ, for example. And you can just do that one investment and have the thing growing in the background. So that $2,500 you've got is now growing at 15, 16, 17% a year, which is going to turn it to $3,000, to $3,000 and a bit. And don't forget, you're going to be continually adding to that.
Can I jump in and offer a story here, personal anecdote? I had a conversation with a really close friend of mine, a girl who I grew up with, like we've known each other since we were born. About 5 years ago, she said to me, Mitch, I've saved up $5,000 and I don't know what to do with it. You work in the stock market, can you help me? So I said, my advice to her, generally speaking, was probably a good idea might be just to buy an index fund like QQQ, which is the NASDAQ 100 exchange traded fund. This particular person, average income at that point in time and probably still at that mark. She recently came to me and she said, I need your help again. I said, why is that? She said, well, I never followed through with what you told me 5 years ago. Can we talk about it? And I gave her the same advice. And I said, that $5,000 to you today would probably be worth $15,000. I said, what does that $10,000 do for you? She said, well, that would probably pay for almost help me pay towards my wedding that we've got in a year's time with her partner. I said, well, that's the cost of indecision.
Yep.
And that was $5,000, not a large sum of money. 5 years ago would now be triple.
I think one of the, and it's so true, it's easier to do nothing than to do something. If you're working with a smaller amount, sometimes that narrative that you can say to yourself is just not worth it. It is worth it for a number of reasons. Number one, the outcome, it's going to grow faster than cash at the bank. Number two is that sense of well-being and pride in yourself that you made a decision, a good decision that pulled you in the right direction, and you've seen a positive return. That reinforcement, I suppose, is what it is, of saying, look, I made some sacrifice. It seemed pointless at the time because it was such a small amount, and then all of a sudden it's actually grown to a more material amount. It's going to put a lot of fuel in your tank to want to do more of that, which sets you up on a habit of a lifetime. And that's the key thing, is the habits that we create that establish where we end up being as human beings. So if you have a habit of working toward saving money where you can, and then second habit of getting that money working for you where you can, by definition, you're going to find yourself in a significantly better financial place, emotional place, and mental place than someone that's just pushed the chips on the table and, oh, it's just too hard, there's no point, I'm never going to get ahead at this level.
Yep.
Don't be in that situation. Human beings thrive on optimism. And I think, making a decision to improve yourself financially or in terms of mentally or skill set is the best investment you ever make. In fact, I always say the best investment you ever make is in yourself and in your education. So learning how you can do these things, you might go, well, do a course costs an arm and a leg. Well, I think you can pick this up. It's on Audible. You can hit us up with a link somewhere around here and get a physical copy of the book. It's $30. It's going to set you up in a position where the lessons that you can take out of that will help you in spades get ahead financially. It's not easy right now, and even if you're working hard and you're set on that average income level with the cost of living that we've got in this country and where it's likely to go for the next 5 years, which is in one direction, it's going to be up. It's not slowing down, it's getting worse. Now is the time to make a decision to go, right, that's it, tight as it might be, difficult as it may be, I am changing trajectory, and I am going to be on a pathway that's going to lead me to more peace of mind financially and ultimately a better financial future. And that decision starts today. Don't put it off.
There you go. Great words of advice, AB. And I think this is a really, really good episode for those out there in this camp. So hopefully they've taken some good points of action from it.
My pleasure. Anytime, Mitch. There you have it, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, hit the notification button, and we'll look forward to hosting you next week.